morning, ladies and gentlemen. Bonjour, guten Morgen, buongiorno. This is not because I know many languages, actually I do not, but because this international symposium is very promising as far as international issues are concerned. And this happens quite often when you talk about ski areas that are, as in this place, at the borders of several states. I think that there is no, maybe there are just a few topics that are so, that can be internationalized as the issues concerning ski, and especially the legal issues concerning skis. This is why I think that the best place, or one of the best places to hold this symposium is exactly Trento, at the border between Italy, Switzerland, and Austria. In an era where actually we are trying to defeat the idea of borders, someone wants to resume them, to revitalize borders. I think that when you deal with issues such as I told you, as I said before, responsibility or liability or rules concerning certain activities, borders matter, but not so much, I think. And I hope that you will not say something completely contrary to what I'm saying today. This means that these sport activities are something that are very useful if you want to assess the idea that you can easily go from one state to another, or from the territory of one state to the territory of another state, and do certain type of activities, knowing what are the rules concerning what you do. I don't want, of course, to spend too much of your time to deal with issues that will be examined during this two-day symposium. What I really want to say is that I welcome you all here, and I thank also the sponsor of this meeting, especially ANEF, whose representative is here on my right, and Umberto Izzo, who organized this international symposium that, as far as I understood, will be the starting point of the building of a new network of relations and important, I would say, points of contact among those who are most involved in this type of activities. So I apologize because I have to go in a while, but I'm really happy that you are here, and I hope you will enjoy staying in Trento. Thank you.
So thank you, Dean Nesi, Pepe. Thanks for your support. The faculty has been very supportive of this meeting. I would like also to thank the ANEF Association, which also supported the initiative, which has, the Dean just said, is just the starting point of a future initiative that we hope to be able to build from this first workshop in the future years, also counting on the possibility to research fundings from Europe and other sources of financing. So, safety and liability in European ski areas. We are here with we'll present shortly the session of our workshop in a minute. We are here to discuss the issue of safety, basically, and the pursuit of safety in European ski areas, which is an issue that can be considered, of course, through the lens of the legal scholar as an issue of liability and safety classically. But in this workshop, we start from from the idea that the legal dimension of any problem, like in this case the problem of safety in ski areas, has an economic dimension. This is especially true of ski areas and the ski industry, which is closely related to the tourism. And so in an alpine region like Trentino, but the same may be true of Tyrol in Innsbruck or Chambéry, the Haute Savoie in France. Of course, this is a very important driver of the economy. Our goal is to explore to what extent different rules and different way of pursuing the goal of safety, the perfect safety on the slope, to prevent injury to skiers and tourist skiers, may be also considered as a cost in terms of, because of course if we want to grant, we want to really pursue safety, we have to invest money to this extent, precautions. And of course, everything at the end of the day becomes a cost. So we want to know, we wonder, we are not sure, of course, this is just the first encounter, but we would like to see if this is possibly something that they may somehow redund or be something that may hamper to some extent the competition between ski area and touristics also, and the tourist land that are built around the ski area, the winter destination market, which is so sensible to new fluxes of tourists and the increasing also mobility of the tourists that, especially in the Europe, we will have plenty of discussion about this in Europe. So first is the dimension of the competition, but also a second related dimension, which is brought by the European law, as we all know here, is the consumer. The dimension of the skier as a consumer who is entitled to have equal protection, or supposed to have equal protection in all the member states. And we will see in this first workshop the dimension, the importance of this rising dimension, which is of course the product not of something that has been designed by Europe for the sake of ski areas, but it's of course part of a very much larger picture where of course we all know the consumer, pro-consumer policy of European Union, and so we will explore also how these dynamics are affecting our topic. Finally, the bottom line. The Dean already introduced the topic. We would like to, from this meeting, start be the first block of a future network, international network, that may be, starting from today, maybe pursuing this topic, which is now from ski areas. But of course, there is also an interesting dimension related to this interplay of legal rules and economics, and of course, for the sake of exploring how European integration is affecting vital sector of our economy. Some topics that more in detail we will discuss during the fourth session of this workshop. Unsafe skiing and its cost. We will present data on ski accident and their economic cost. The benefits of skiing, especially in the first session, we will have some attempt to show how important is ski for the economics of the land that are interested by this touristic sport phenomena. Managing a safe ski area, issue concerning the public or private property of ownership of the ski areas. Of course, the need of providing a very detailed safety provision and administrative regulation. Issuing safety means the role of technical norms and of course the intricacy given by the fact that sometimes within a European member states there are some regional structure of the law that may affect this kind of problem, especially, for instance, in Italy, and we are very curious to know about other of course, European states. We have a strong tendency towards the regionalization of these rules. And this is also an issue that we should address. And then an important topic is perceiving safety. We posit that in discussing the issue of safety and liability on the ski areas, a good deal of, a very important issue is the cognitive factors. Because on the ski area, when we ski, we are living an experience for the sake of that experience. And sometimes in this, it's an environment where we cannot think with the same ideas that we have when we discuss about vehicle collisions or traffic collision. So we'll discuss also this issue. And then patrolling safety, who is in charge of surveillance on the ski areas, and of course also the role of new technology. This afternoon we will have out from the program that it's printed of the workshop, we will have a brief intervention by some ICT scholars from Trento who are experiencing a program of geolocalization on the slopes. And we will see how important is the role of the technology in improving the safety on the ski areas. And then, of course, the assessing safety means what's happened, what's the impact of the civil liability, how civil liability is interpreted, and what's the different rules at stake in this litigation, that it's increasing, at least in Italy. And finally, the 8th point of our workshop is how to distribute the cost of unsafe skiing, which means talking about insurance, talking about how, of course, we can frame the insurance on this, in this specific field and a kind of accident. So, very briefly, I'm talking too much. First session, sketch the economic contour of the problem. We will have, I will leave the ground in 1 minute to Maria Della Lucia, Associate Professor of Economics at the University of Trento, and then she will be followed by Valeria Ghezzi, who is president of the ANEF, the Italian Association of Ski Area Operators. Both Maria will focus mostly on the economics of the that it's moved by the ski sport phenomena, and while President Ghezzi will talk about problems from the perspective of the operators, of course. We will after have, we are limiting this first economic inquiry to 2 case studies, Italy and Poland, and so we will have Jadwiga Berbenka from Krakow, followed with Krzysztof Berbenka from Jagiellonian University of Krakow as well. They will present data about the Polish experience. So this is briefly what we're going to discuss. I hope that you will enjoy this meeting, and thanks for coming. I'll leave the ground to Maria Della Lucia for starting her presentation. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased to contribute to this workshop, and so I thank you very much, Umberto, for having invited me to be here today. So as said before, I'm assistant professor of tourism and business management here at the University of Trento, and my presentation will focus on the economic impact, mainly of tourism, but then more in specific on winter tourism and the ski industry. The perspective is to consider economic impact analysis as investment decision-making tools that policymakers, managers, operators may use to support local but also business development and to assess the effects of these development, in particular where tourism has a leading role. So my presentation will provide a general framework of economic impact analysis from a destination management perspective. So this is important because I'm not a lawyer, so from a destination management perspective. So what it means, economic impact, what why is important to assess it and how. And then the presentation will provide some key figures about the economic impact of tourism, and then on winter tourism, and finally on the ski industry worldwide, in Europe and Alpine countries in particular, and finally here in the province of Trento. Because in the province of Trento there is best practice of assessing the economic impact. So, from a destination management perspective, tourism, governance, management, and marketing are aimed at enhancing the performances of the sector in terms of positioning, image, brand, competitiveness, tourism numbers, but also tourism sustainability, which of course combine environmental, social, and economic dimensions. Economic impact is of course an economic performance measure, and economic impact analysis, as said before, are tools that decision makers may use to support effective tourism planning. Of course, the more precise and accurate these analyses are, the more helpful to tourism planning there will be. However, assessing the economic impact of tourism is far of being trivial, because tourism is really a very complex industry which straddles a lot of many different sectors. So, ski industry, accommodation, travel agency, transportations, and so on, which provide goods and services to both tourists but also to residents. This is why tourism as a whole industry is not included in the classification of the economic activities provided by international, European, and national institutes of statistics. In addition, the national and regional accounts do not provide accurate estimates of all tourism aggregates which are needed to assess the whole economic impact. The implications are twofold. First of all, assessing the economic impact of tourism is usually limited to, the numbers, tourism numbers, or their expenditure from the demand side, or from the supply side to tourism enterprises or tourism employees. Second, assessing the whole economic impact of tourism needs to design and to implement ad hoc surveys on both the demand and the supply side, and to develop ad hoc evaluation systems. The tourism satellite account is an example of this evaluation system, but not the only one. But what is important is that, in respective of the evaluation system, the assumption to which they all converge is that the final demand for goods and services from tourists, so skiers, for example, generates multiplicative effect within the economic system in terms of production, sales, added value, income, employment. And these multiplicative effects are due to the cross-sectoral interdependencies within the local economy. In other words, the final demand generates intermediate demands both within and outside the economy where the demand is expressed. And this means that only the domestic sectors will contribute to the whole economic impact assessed within the local economy, while the importing of goods, not exactly services, from external economies are the so-called spillover effects, which are not included in the economic impact at the local level. So the whole economic impact is an estimation of all these effects, which are direct, indirect, and induced. So the direct effect is the production involved in providing directly the goods and services required, and it's equal more or less to the tourist expenditure or the travel expenditure. The indirect effects are the production involved in supplying the inputs needed to provide directly these goods and services required, so the intermediate demand. And finally, the newest aspect is the consumption linked to the income generated directly or indirectly to tourism. A lot of many different multi-sector impact models may be used to apply all these effects. For example, impact, economic base, input, output, social country matrix, and so on. Of course, each of these models has both strengths and weaknesses. Usually, the input-output models are the widely used because are less costly than the others, but also because they allow for a fine industrial disaggregation. So what is important to say, and with respect to the topic of this workshop, is that the data entry of all these models are currency amounts. So the expenditure for goods and services, for example, the accommodation, the ski pass, and so on. And in order to provide these services, other costs are supported by the providers, so from the ski operators and so on. This is the main idea, and this because I think it is important to provide also this model. But what the economic impact evaluation system says is that in order to assess the whole economic impact, all these effects should be evaluated. And the Travel and Tourism Council assesses all these effects worldwide and at a country level. And according to the most up-to-date key figures, the travel and tourism in 2014 generated around $8 trillion, equal to almost the 10% of global GDP, around 300 million jobs, over the 9% of total employment, and over 1 billion arrivals. What is important to say is that the trend in the last 10 years has been positive and forecast as positive as well. And tourism has grown more than the wider economy and more than important sector, for example, automotive, financial sector, or healthcare. The breakdown of this total economic impact shows how much the different effects contribute to the total. And what is important to underline is that this contribution is local specific because it depends on the local economy. Worldwide, this figure shows that the travel and tourism contribution to both GDP and to employment has been more or almost more than 3 times the direct effect. This because the indirect effects contributed the most, over the 50% in terms of GDP and over the 40% in terms of employment. This means that at a global level, the intermediate demand plays a very significant role in generating this effect. In addition, the leisure travel spending, and in particular the domestic travel spending, contributed the most to the direct effect, so to the total expenditure. This means that both business expenditure and foreign travel expenditure at the global level are not so important. Of course, as said before, country matters. So in the Alpine country in particular, the travel and tourism contribution to GDP has been greater, higher than the world average, but also the European average, except for Switzerland. Austria ranks highest, both in terms of direct and total contribution. It follows Italy, Germany, and France, but the case of Slovenia is very interesting because even if it ranks 90th in terms of direct contribution, it ranks directly after Austria in terms of total contribution. This means that in this country, the indirect effect, so the intermediate demand, is really very important. In terms of the total contribution to employment, the rank of the ranking of alpine countries almost the same. However, Germany ranks highest in terms of direct contribution, but Austria, again, ranks highest in terms of total contribution. And also in this case, Slovenia performs better than the other countries. Also in this case, the breakdown shows the differences between these countries. So in Italy, in France, and in Germany, the direct effects contributed the most to the total economic impact, and this is current with the ranking by UN and WTO between the top 10 destinations in terms of tourism arrivals and in tourism expenditure. On the other hand, in Slovenia, Switzerland, and partly in Austria, are the indirect effects which contributed the most to the total economic impact. But by definition, direct effects are higher than indirect effects when services outweigh goods in the final demand and when the local economy lacks a strong industrial base. What does it mean? This means that services are usually produced and consumed locally in a very short period of time and by using a very limited number of sectors. This means that the intermediate demand is very low and concentrated in a small number of sectors. On the other hand, when the local economy lacks a strong industrial base, this means that the material goods are imported from the outside, thus generated spillover effects outside, so not contributed to the indirect internal effect. And this is very, very important to consider. These insights are positive. However, economic impact analysis encounter limitation when they are scaled down from national to regional and local level, from the whole tourism industry sector to specific industry, in particular, in this case, the ski industry, from annual to sub-period evaluation, for example, winter season. And this because, in many cases, multi-sector regional impact models will not be available. And this means that the multiplier needed to assess these effects should be scaled down from the national level or borrowed from list of multipliers. But in many cases, in this case, and in particular for winter tourism of the ski industry, as in this case, the economic impact analysis are limited to the direct effects only: tourism expenditure, tourism arrivals, tourism enterprises, tourism employees, and so on. This is manifested, for example, in this report, this international report on snow and mountain tourism, which provides an updated and very, very detailed overview of this ski industry figure worldwide, but economic impact analysis are not included at all in this report because it's quite difficult to assess this. However, these reports show that 80 countries participate in the world ski market, corresponding to more than 2,000 ski resorts, 5,000-6,000 skiing areas, 400 million skier visits. And alpine countries play a leading role in this market, in particular in Europe. In fact, they concentrate the 35% of ski resorts and over the 80% of the major ski resorts, corresponding to around the 40% of ski lifts. Alps also have the biggest market share in terms of skier visits, 44% of these 400 million skier visits. However, in fact, France, Austria, Italy, Switzerland, and Germany rank among the top country for both ski visits and the number of ski lifts. However, in the last 10 years, ski visit trends have been stable or slightly negative, demonstrating that these countries are mature destinations. This means also for the future that lever to develop for a development of this country may be foreign ski visits. However, where can foreign skier visit come from? These reports say us that ski is a domestic market. So Europe fits Europe, Asia Pacific fits area Pacific. And this means also that in Europe, the bigger outbound countries are located in Western Europe, and they feed a very small number of inbound countries. In other words, Germany, United Kingdom, Netherlands, and Belgium provide skiers for the alpine country. On the other hand, it is important also to say that in Asia Pacific is growing, and the future international events, for example, the 2018 Winter Olympics or 2022 Winter Olympics will contribute to this growth. Finally, 2 minutes, for sure. Finally, the case of Trentino. Why? Because Trentino, I said before, is a leading winter destination in Italy, and because the province of Trento has a very long experience in assessing the economic impact of tourism by using, and this is very important to underline, by using an evolution of economic impact analysis developed from the bottom up, so developed from surveys of the local economies. The last surveys showed that winter tourism generates almost the half of the total tourist expenditure, and the ski expenditure contributes for the 23% of the total winter expenditures. The numbers of visitors in the winter season are around the 30% of the total annual overnights, and the trend has been slightly positive in the last 10 years. However, winter tourism expenditure has been negative in the same period, and this because the behaviors of tourists have changed, and this is evident in both the level but also the composition of the tourism expenditure. For example, the expenditure for ski pass has decreased, and the money saved in the accommodation have been allocated in other expenditures. Coming to the multiplicative effect of these expenditures, winter tourism generates almost half of the annual provincial added value. This, simply said, this means that a winter tourism expenditure of about 100 euros generates almost 70 euros of value added. But what is important also to underline is that destinations, so the areas in Trentino where the ski resorts are located, generate the most of the winter tourism added value, around the 70%. So, in conclusion, economic impact analysis are tools that decision makers can use to support effective investment and assess their effects. However, in order to be helpful, these analyses should be precise and accurate, and this means that they should be place-specific and local-specific. This requires both accurate data entry and accurate methodologies. This means data entry, this means analysis, first of all, of the tourist demand, because it is the data entry. How many, the type, their expenditure, their behavior, and then use accurate, of course, multi-sector models in order to evaluate their multiplicative effects. Sorry.
Thanks.
For maybe I took too much time.
Thanks, Maria. It was very interesting presentation. So I leave the ground now to introduce Valeria Ghezzi, President of ANEF. Please, Dr. Ghezzi, if you want to
Good morning. I'm Valeria Ghezzi. I'm the president of ANEF, and ANEF is an association which is part of FIANET. There is the European Association of Ski Area Operators. What I am saying today is a little bit more general and more political than even if it contains our economic point of view, but less technically respect to what Maria Della Lucia just presented. And it's a view which is largely shared with our European colleagues, so the other countries of the Alpine region, essentially. I will mostly read it because I'm not so used to speaking English to the public, but I hope it will be anyway clear enough. Skiing is a sport, but it is, as we just saw, a very important economical and social activity. And it involves much more, as it has been said, than lift and sports. All ski resorts develop and grow around lifts, around cableways, around ropeways. Without those, there would be probably no economic activity, no social welfare as well. But what is important to say is also that the true and the ultimate scope of the lift is not the lift. The lift is merely a way to transport people, to transport people to the top. What is important is what people can do when they get down lift. And skiing is, we can say, nowadays, the most important activity. It is true what Maria Della Lucia just said, that we have seen in the last few years a slightly decreasing number of sold ski passes, but still there is not enough of any other kind of activity or offer, or if we want to see it the other way around, of demand, to sustain life and welfare in the mountain villages if there is no skiing. In Italy, there are more of 400 companies running ropeways, and there are another 650 companies which are, in fact, single lift owners. They manage their single lift with their single slope. They're very small reality, but they are a very important number, so important to the economic reality of, say, our world. Total turnover of our ski pass, to say, industry is €1 billion, and we estimate that we generate an induced or indirect expenditure for 7 billion in satellite activities. And satellite activities are hotels, are restaurants, are shops, are ski teachers, and which otherwise wouldn't have wouldn't have a job, let's say, or wouldn't have a client. But there is an expenditure which is made before, which is the investment in infrastructure. And that is as well a very important kind of indirect turnover generated by the ski industry. Lately, at a European level, we have been studying the parallel, if I can say, effect on work. Because we can say that employment is generated by a factor of 5. For each worker in the lifts, we have 5 people working in other activities. As I said, it's not the lift, which is our, in a way, our core business. We run the lifts, but people don't ask for lifts. People ask for something else. Tourists ask for something else. So skiing is an outdoor sport, and skiers usually ride in a very valuable and very environmental and landscape context. This is particularly true in the Dolomites, where I come from. And I must say that after over 60 years of development of the ski area, landscape and environment still remain our most important resource. They are the product. They are what the tourist looks for. Developing a safe, sustainable, and at the same time attractive activity is, I think, our greatest challenge. And we must not forget that sustainability must be achieved environmentally, socially, and economically at the same time. And I can assure you that it's not easy, but that is the scope. Managing a ski area with safety in mind is a basic condition for a successful company. Safe skiing and a safe ski area are taken for granted from the tourist. It's considered obvious in a way. So we consider that safety is, for our offer, a key issue. There is no fun without safety, or would be better to say that there is no fun without a reasonable degree of safety, as I will say. Commitment to safety starts from the very beginning. Because this is when we plan the ski area, when we plan lifts, and above all, when we plan slopes. Safety starts when we start with the project. When we first study the slope idea. But orography is something that cannot be thoroughly changed. So a steep slope project starts with a layout on the terrain and with taking into account the environmental conditions. There are technical norms and law regulation to follow. And these are established by the regional law here in Trentino, but in other regions in Italy. There is not a national law ruling how to build a slope, but many regions have their own regulation. Once the slope design is completed, our technicians define, along with the project, which kind of protection are needed for safety. That means nets, that means mattresses, that means warning signals along the slopes, which are important to provide directions and to inform about intersection and about the rules to follow. This, of course, is made on paper, which means this, of course, is made in considering normal snow conditions. Then there is a reality. Then there are real snow conditions, which are always very different from what you find on paper. So when a ski slope is built and is ready to operate, the local operation management decide on opening and closing every day. There is a continuous control needed, and that must, of course, adapt to weather condition, to air temperature, to snow condition, and there is a continuous check on the protection facilities and on any kind of dangerous obstacle. Our main law is a national law, which is number 363, and it dates 2003. So I wrote, what did it change? Because I was asked, what's the impact? What has been the impact of this law? And coming from Trentino, I must say, it hasn't been really devastating. It hasn't been such an impact because we already had our regional law, which is not really far away from the national or regulation. National law 363 provides definitions of ski area, provides definition of skiing and snowboarding, and it establishes the rules for the maintenance of the ski area from the point of view of safety. It establishes the responsibility of the ski area manager and the rules which have to be followed. But particularly, it establishes the rules, the responsibility of the skiers and the rules that the skier have to follow. And to us, this has been a very important fact. Before that, there were the so-said fizzy rules, which means the rules which were not mandatory, of course, established by the Italian Federation of Ski. They were kind of good practice, but they were no law. Now, these rules have become law in the 363 Italian national law. But if we are very happy that not only ski area managers, but also skiers have rights and duties, the question we very often ask is, this part of 363 law concerning the behavior of skiers and the rules for skiers, is it fairly enforced? And is it fairly enforced in trial when we have a litigation, when we are sued? This is the question that we ask, and if we ask it, it's because we do not perceive it as fairly enforced. We are committed to build and operate our lifts and ski slopes following rules and also following common sense. But still, there are a few very important uncovered issues. Issues that Law 363 doesn't make clearly enough. There is uncertainties which leave a lot of space to the judge who will have to decide it, and which do not make clear enough the limits of our responsibility as ski area manager. Among these, I will mention the definition of danger. We talk, and I don't know if in English that's the right term, of typical and not typical or atypical danger. But nobody has ever really stated what is typical and what is not. And another important point is where our liability ends. It's very difficult to define where the border of the slope is. And if we have to be responsible for what happens outside the border or not. Inside, it's obvious. But there is a kind of gray zone outside the border, which is entirely left to the judges. All this safety management, and I've written security and safety because most of the ski areas have police forces patrolling the ski area, which means there is a safety service, but a security service as well, what we call public order in Italian. All this has costs which are very important for the ski area, the ski areas, and which have been increasing very lot in the last, say, 10 years. All the infrastructures deployed for security, for safety, for maintenance imply heavy fixed and variable costs. Fixed, of course, as I said, foreseen already when we project, and variable, what I described as day by day. And these have an enormous, paramount impact on profitability of our business. Safety in a ski area means to make sure that rules are observed by both ski area managers and by users. And police, we have both police, surveillance, or equivalent authority, and staff standing directly from the company running the slope, who patrol the slope. slope maintenance is a key activity to provide safety. It is very, very labor intensive. That means we have a dedicated staff, not just anybody, to control the skiers and to inspect the infrastructures. And they normally work 8 or more hours a day. Like they start before the opening and they finish after closing. Every single day, in fact, after closing slopes, and I start from the end, we have to remove most of the mobile provisions to allow free space for the snow machine to prepare the slopes for the next morning, maintenance. But obviously, every morning before opening, we have to return all the mobile provisions back to their right place, which is a lot of work. I don't know technically the rules of the other European countries. So what I'll give you, it's my perception, shared very often with my colleagues. But our perception is that when we go skiing to Austria, to France, to Switzerland, just to name the 4 countries which are the most important, we saw it with the slide from Vanna reports before, which are the most important for alpine skiing. We come back very often with the feeling that our safety provisions on Italian slopes are more complex than abroad. You find on our slopes an amount of matrices, of nets, of slope signs, which is higher than abroad. But, or for instance, just to make you a practical example, if you ski in Switzerland and you have a ski lift, which means a lift where you are with your ski on the ground, a slope can cross the line of a ski lift. You have to be careful. You just have to be careful. In Italy, this is absolutely forbidden. You can't. And this is just to give you a practical example, but we could stay here for a long time. The fact that we have so many more provisions is not that we are any better of our European colleagues, but is maybe that we feel strongly committed to provide safety regardless from the behavior of the skiers, which is exactly the contrary than saying you have to be careful. And jurisprudence and the state of law enforcement in this direction are wide enough, let us think this way. And the relevant consequence of any accident and of this enforcement or of safety is the cost of our insurance policy, which has to be added to all the rest of the costs, safety costs. And insurance has become a very great concern for ski area operators in Italy. Jurisdiction tends to charge most of the liability to the lift company, which are considered generally the strong part. The weak part is the skier. That is the consumer in a way. But there is in Italy an important role in jurisdiction of liability presumption. We have the perception that that part of national law which dictates behavior rules of the skiers is not really considered. And the result of all this is that many insuring companies in Italy have refused to cover the risk on the slope. Many of us are insured with foreign insurance companies, so far as to go and look for an insurance company in Australia. There are quite a few already. So I think I couldn't be very critical on our Italian law, which is not so bad according to us. But we could ask for a much more consistent and fair enforcement of the whole body of the law. And I will end by saying that as we have seen, we have active and passive safety. We, as ski area managers, can take care mostly of passive safety, which involves whatever can be done to prevent an accident, and which involves also the emergency procedures in case an accident occurs. But active safety is what users can and must do whenever they ride. And this is not only a law problem. This is, let's say, a problem of education, a kind of a social problem. Everybody has to behave according to common sense, according to a responsible behavior. There should be an individual sense of caution and carefulness. And we must not forget that safety is also an effect of individual perception. It is absolutely related, strictly related to the physical conditions of every single skier. So individual responsibility plays a very important role, along with the weather condition. Safety changes. There is fog, or if the snow is good and compact, or if the snow is soft and what we call spring snow. So what I want to say as a conclusion is that there cannot be anything which is 100% safe. In every human activity, in every sport, there is a residual risk, a risk which cannot be eliminated. And we have to add always a human factor. In no situation whatsoever we can abstract from individual responsibility. But our perception is that nowadays this individual responsibility from our jurisdiction is kind of set aside because we are the strong part of it. So this is a little bit the point of view of ANEF, and as I said, widely shared with our European colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, President Ghezzi, for this illuminating view of the view of the operators. I'll now call Professor Jadwiga Berbenka, talking about Poland, so giving a comparative view on Poland, the issue that we've been discussing so far. To you.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, it's really a great pleasure for me and my husband to be here on this important and very interesting meeting. So thank you very much to organizers. We are economists, so we would like to concentrate on cost caused by implementation of the new law regulation on Polish ski resorts. So in fact, our presentation will be from the point of view.
Maybe it doesn't work.
Okay. I will do it. I will start with giving you a short description of Polish ski market, because probably you are not familiar with it. Then we are going to present the requirements imposed by new law regulation. And finally, I am going to present the results of our research, which we conduct in Poland, starting certainly from methodology, research description, and finaling with conclusions. The question, which is quite natural, how many ski resorts are in Poland? It's not so obvious, because very often, even in official documents by ministry, there is a report that there are about 300 ski areas, but it means ski area with one ski lift. If we take the criteria which are usually taken, it means 4 ski lifts as a resort. There are about 180 ski resorts like this. But, to be honest, only 70 ski resorts has at least 1 chairlift. So, Polish ski resorts are small. They are located at the altitude of 300 to 800 meters, because we are not very privileged as far as the mountainous conditions are concerned. And they are located mostly in the south of Poland. But what's a kind of particularity of Polish ski resorts? Many of them are located near big big cities. What means they are used by skiers after work, après travail. So it's something different. So they operate till long evening hours. It means 9 or 10 in the evening. And they have artificial lighting, what's necessary. The next quite obvious question is, how many skiers are in Poland? And also statistics are not very precise, but in my opinion, the most reliable data are conducted by, our result is research by Central Statistical Office, which says there are about 2.8 million of skiers. What means in a big country like Poland with 38 million inhabitants, it's not much. But to be honest, the ski culture in Poland is a bit lower than in well-developed alpine markets. But to contrary to the trend Professor Della Lucia said, in Poland this trend of skiing and interest in ski is still increasing, so we are in a different phase. The profile of Polish skier is typical, I think, also to the alpine skier, young, well-educated, in a good economic position. And Professor Izzo asked the question, is skiing a driving force of the winter market destination? 2 years ago, I conducted a research, and Professor Della Lucia gave you the perfect background. So my results show that the direct expenditure of skiers, only of skiers, was about 365 million euro. That indirect expenditures, which I calculated with the use of American multiplier, because I haven't found better one, was about 183 million euro. So the economic value of Polish ski resorts, so the impact, was about 547 million of euro. The picture of duties of ski resort is quite complicated, so I try to present a short overview. There is the Act of 2011, which will be detailedly described by Dr. Wolski, so I am only going to focus on the duties imposed to the ski resorts, and these duties are creating costs and not creating costs. Besides, there are some existing regulations different than this act, which impose the necessity of some operations. Besides, there are some actions taken by ski resorts which are not imposed by law but are cost-generating, and except there are new activities not forced by law but also undertaken by resorts. So, focusing on requirements for ensuring safety of skiers in ski areas forced by law regulation, 4 issues should be taken under consideration. First one, which was imposed by the new act, is the minimal area which is necessary for each skier. It's a special equation with which you can calculate such an area, and in fact we can say it's a kind of parameterization of ski traffic on ski slopes. The next issue also imposed by the new act is the minimal light intensity with this artificial lightening on the slopes. The third case is securing ski areas. Mrs. President told a lot about it, so I am not going to repeat it. And the fourth issue is organization of rescue service. Organization is a duty of ski operator, and it can be done by the resort as itself, using ski rescuers. It's something different probably than in other countries, or it can be contracted to mountain rescue service. So these are requirements, but the enforcement of these requirements is, I think, a very weak point, because, in fact, there is no state institution which control the first, this parameterization and the lightening. So, in fact, these are ski resorts who invite representative of mountain ski rescue to give such an acceptance of ski resort as far as safety conditions and as far as this parameters conditions. But as Mrs. President said, this is paper and this is live. So if they come before the season and check the condition, it's not quite the same as a real condition in the natural weather condition. Safety on slopes, it's also not obligatory check. In fact, ski resorts also invite, maybe not invite, they asked mountain ski resorts to make such a check, and they paid for this service just to be on the safe side, to have the certificate that the resort is safe, which is necessary for insurance company in case of any problem. Okay, so now about our research. Certainly we started with searching some secondary resources, ministry documentation, Supreme Audit Office report, which checked the safety in the mountains and ski areas. But then we conducted in-depth reviews with owners of ski operators, with insurance companies, and with mountain rescue service members. Finally, we prepared the questionnaire, which was distributed to the member of Polish Association of Ski and Tourist Resorts, which consists of 81 members. In fact, these are the biggest Polish ski resorts. And this questionnaire was filled in by 15 ski resorts, which means the rate of return of 19%. But in fact, all big Polish ski resorts respond. And these responding resorts have a capacity of 10% of Polish ski resorts. So in our opinion, it is representative research results. Now,
okay, we have to do with different type of expenditure. We have to do with one-time expenditure, and the unit is million of euro, and we have to do with some permanent seasonal expenditure with different unit. Million of euro per year, it's impossible to directly add such figure. Therefore, we have to use some technique. It will be described in the next slide. We have to ask about stranded cost. It means my ski center, it's quite good. I can operate it in this technical condition the next 10 years, but due to the huge amount of necessary investment, I have to close it just now. This is type of stranded cost. And we ask about penalties for not meeting the requirements and recourses from insurance company. In fact, this last 3 point hasn't happened yet in Poland, but this is the proper methodology of checking all incremental costs. We use the technique of annualized cost to switch from one-time investment outlays to permanent annual cost, and we assume that the expected rate of return is 10%, and in this way it was possible to create an indicator of additional annual cost caused by implementation the new law in the unit euro per 1,000 person capacity in the resort. That's why it's possible to compare the additional expenditure between the resorts and also between the countries. And roughly results are shown on this table. It's possible to calculate resort by resort, piece by piece, but in our opinion, the last column, when we calculate the structure using capacity of this resort, it's much more reliable. And final calculation, this additional cost range about 1,000 euro per year per 1,000 person capacity. It's only the impact of the new law in Poland on our ski resorts. If we assume that our sample is reliable and the data which we gathered during the survey are really reliable, because we have no possibility of check these figures, how much money they spend in real life, these ski operators. Okay, let's skip these 2 slides about existing costs before this new regulation and some additional problem. Our rescue mountain service is financed by Ministry of Interior, and they are very reluctant to co-finance private business like ski centers, and they request from our mountain rescue service to double the accounting service and try to split this cost. At this moment, our mountain rescue service state, no, it's impossible, and in fact, we have kind of a proxy of this cost, because if only one helicopter exists and this is in charge for mountain rescue service, they will not reject the urgent request from the slope that they will never state, we will not save such person. Therefore, it's kind of proxy, all these figures. And the basic question, it's possible to force skiing operators to invest another amount of money, but the main question, what we pay for? What is the effect of this investment? Of course, we can force this in the ski center operators to double, for example, the fence. In this moment, the typical fence is 1 line. We can multiply for 2 lines or 3 lines. But what we get? Let's start from this second position, preferences of skiers. According to big survey conducted in Poland 2 or 3 years ago, on the sample over 2,000 of skiers, the security, it's not a really strong argument in the process of choosing the ski center. Only less than 1% of skiers indicate, yes, we take under the consideration the opinion about security of this ski center. It means in the context of PR of the ski center, it's not a benefit. We can expect some changes in accident numbers. In this moment, we have to do with highest level of safety. And we have serious problem with calculation, with creditable calculation of this number of accidents. Why? On these ski centers, which are served by professional mountain rescue service, everything is okay, there is full statistic, this data are gathered. On this ski center, which are served by private skiing rescue service, in fact, this legal obligation of reporting all accidents not exist at all. And on the other hand, the number of resorts served by professional service is not constant over the time. Therefore, it's possible to gather the data about accidents on the Polish slopes, on the slopes in Poland, but it's absolutely a wrong picture because this picture is not made in the condition of ceteris paribus. We have to do with a different number of ski centers, and we have to do with good or bad season in different number of days per year. One attempt to avoid part of these weaknesses is to calculate number of accidents per ski resorts. And the results are astonishing. We spend a lot of money and the number of accidents is going up. Still, the process of smoothing between good and bad season is not implied in this moment. We have some ideas how to do it, but this is a subject of tomorrow's discussion because this is the offer of the methodology for smoothing such statistic. The discussion concerning number of accidents only in the light of the investment spent on the slope is not proper because simultaneously we imposed the obligation of wearing the helmet. There is a legal ban of skiing after alcohol, and this is execution of these 2 rules because from the 3 years we have the police on the slope. It's something new. It's not imposed the cost on ski center operators because the police patrol are paid by Ministry of Interior at this moment. And let's finalize with some conclusion. I think our proposal of this synthetic indicator of additional cost, it's quite reliable. It's possible to apply the same indicator in other alpine countries, but to provide full cost-benefit analysis, this valuation of the benefit, it's necessary. At this moment, we can offer only a roughly methodology of valuation of these benefits, and because we have only one position and we need 2, still it's a lot of work to do. Thanks a lot for your attention and hypothetical comments.
Thank you. Thank you, Christophe and Jadwiga. So I found out that we are in perfect timing with our schedule. So now we have a coffee break, and in 15 minutes we'll come back here to go on with the second session. Thanks.